Well, I can assure you that we do have a method in place where there is a performance contract, and it sets out the criteria as to what the general manager performance will be evaluated on, and that is the information that the board took into consideration in providing him with a merit increase.
Well, I understand that, but it goes to this committee, it goes to the council. And I don't see our city employees getting a 5% increase. What's his compensation now?
His annual salary?
Yes.
Roughly $189,000
$189,000?
annually, yes.
Any other benefits on that position?
There's no other bonuses.
Does he have a car? Does he get a car allowance?
He does not receive a car allowance.
He doesn't receive a car?
Currently, no.
But does he receive a car?
He does have a car, yes.
Is that subsidized by the city?
That's correct.
So he gets a car allowance from the city? A car allowance from the pension?
In essence, yes.
So what other benefits does he have? 189 plus a car. June Gibson, would you like that?
You're going to drag me into this.
Or they're recommending a 5%. Retirees got a 3%. And this hard economic time, because I just read last week in the newspaper that the revenues, the investments, weren't returning what they're supposed to return. I think there was a 12% reduction.
I understand that the market is volatile. I believe that
But when it's hard times, then you normally don't give a pay raise. When it's nice times, you give a pay raise. That's the way I've looked at it.
I believe they will be making a presentation to City Council sometime next week.
Why aren't they making it here?
Unfortunately, they have an additional meeting to attend to.
And I think we will continue this then. How's that sound? Because I'd like to find out why we're not receiving increases in the performance of the fund, at the same time recommend a 5% increase in salary. What? I know, but it's still 12% reduction. And that before it goes to council, it should come to this committee if it deals with personnel issues. He runs that Board of Pension Commissioners. Did this go through the EERC?
No.
No, sir, this is for information
No,
only.
This is a recommendation under the merit pay plan. Under the merit pay plan, the mayor has authority to award merit pay up to 5% for general managers that are not under the proprietaries. For the proprietary departments, the merit pay is the determination of the commission, and the commission in this case has made a 5% merit pay adjustment for the general manager.
Well, if the revenues are $400 million projected deficit next fiscal year, as the mayor stated, and the pension fund has a minus 12%, as I read in the paper, I would question how they come up with a 5% increase in salary. Are we going to give the employees a 5% increase in salary, Ms. Gibson?
Councilman, you might want to ask the department what evaluation factors were considered other than just the investment.
Were there any others considered?
Yes, firstly, strategic planning and implementation, operations, personal development, supervision of staff.
Well, what about the most important thing, the investments of the dollars in the pension fund, so that those poor retirees will have something to live on, not have to worry about their monthly stipend? I just find that as bad as the economy is, at $189,000 in a car or some subsidy for a car, seems a bit out of line. What's the recommended for civilians?
For this fiscal year, 3%.
3%? That's before us today, isn't it?
What's before you today on another item is 3%, and the basic cost of living increase for council deputies.
3%. I'm not,
This is separate and apart from.
I understand that. I'm just talking about the overall increase we're giving people when the mayor says we're a $400 million deficit next year, and maybe more the year after. I think it sets a tone where people say, why aren't I getting a 5%? I think it sets
This is
a
an issue where the council has authorized merit pay under the merit pay ordinance, and that.
Plus when times are good.
Discretion.
Times aren't so good right now.
And I'm not exactly sure when the commission took this action, but I'm reasonably certain this commission action was taken well before the last 3 weeks, which was the significant downturn in the market.
How often is the evaluation give annual?
Annual, correct?
Annual evaluation. How long's Mr. Perez been with this position?
Roughly 3 years, I believe.
3 years?
It was before I came on board.
Has he received a pay increase every year for the last 3 years?
That's correct. Historically, it's 5%.
Pardon me?
Historically, it's 5%.
So he's received, that'll be 15% in 3 years, 555.
However, he doesn't receive any step increases as most of civilian employees do.
But 189,000 is not too shabby for a salary. And he runs the fire and police pension, general manager of that particular fund, and the performance evaluation. What about the performance evaluation itself? I mean, it's just, all this says is there's really no criteria established.
Well, the criteria changes from year to year.
What was the criteria that they decided to do 5%
That,
this year? I mean, you know, is it because he did this, that, or the other, or didn't do this, that, or the other?
right, it's subjective as well as goals that are measurable, and it deals with strategic planning and implementation, operations, which includes budgeting and financial management, risk management as well, and leadership, personal development,
How
and
they
staff
scored 1 to 10
development.
or 1 to 5? How they scored?
I believe it's 1 to 4 and 1 to 5, depending on the area. It's sort of like what we do with our own personal performance evaluation: is competent, incompetent, satisfied, satisfied. And they
That's not-
complement that with comments as well.
How come that's not part of this package?
Standard procedures are that we provide the letter to the council and the mayor with attachment of resolution.
I don't see it.
Councilmember Zine, I don't want to encroach on your questions because you're certainly free to do that, but I want to make sure that you're aware under Charter Section 508E, any chief administrative officer or executive director that is appointed by a commission pursuant to ordinance shall be annually reviewed by the appointing commission. That commission shall set or adjust the compensation for the chief administrative officer or executive director within the salary guidelines established by council. After recommendations concerning those guidelines have been made to the council by the director of the CAO, the commission shall forward a copy of the evaluation and salary determination to the mayor and council for information. So this is an informational report that's before you.
So we can't deny this and ask for more information?
Well, you can ask for more information, but your denial really wouldn't be of any
And why does it come here?
effect. So you can ask questions, stir
Not get
conversation.
Not get answers?
I don't know that you won't receive answers.
Well, I'm not getting
But
satisfactory
it's-
answers. I'm not getting satisfactory answers to say a 5% increase is in order. I'm not getting those answers. And if this is what the recommendation is, then I'm not going to accept it based upon what I'm seeing in front of me. So then I reject it, and then what happens to it?
Well, you can move it forward without action.
What if I-
It's not an action item.
What if I hold it for additional information? It's a note and file action.
It's gonna go forward anyway to council, or, let's see. well, to council for information. That review process, if there's a point at which this could be impacted, it would be when the commission is going through its review process.
Which is already done.
Correct.
So we could put no recommendation? Send it with no recommendation?
Well, it's not an action item.
Pete?
Essentially, it's a note and receive or receive and file item, or note and file item, excuse me.
Now, what if I choose not to do that because I'm not happy with the responses or the documentation? I just don't think it's in order.
No, and I understand that because of the way the charter lays that authority out, the board's decision is already final. You're just being informed of it.
I 245 it?
It's too late, and I'm not sure that, I'd have to look at 245, but I believe that there are a number of personnel actions, including this type of action, that is not subject to 245.
I don't know if it's
So, I believe it's not.
It's like we're at the end of the train and it's
Correct.
already gone.
Correct.
Which doesn't really seem to
And that's because this is a personnel evaluation of a general manager that's not within the purview of the council to do, except for the people that you appoint directly.
We're not seeing, we're getting information, we're not seeing the results of that.
You should have received a copy of the evaluation itself, at least according to the section that,
All I have is the piece of paper that says item number 1, summary, presenter, and then doesn't give anything else. That's it, 2 pages. No evaluation.
you're not only entitled, but you have, under the charter, you're supposed to receive, the council's supposed to receive that, so it should be part of the file. If you don't have it, you can continue it for that purpose, just so long as you know that your continuation doesn't stop the race from being processed.
Well, until we get, why can't we hold it until we get that evaluation?
And you can, it's just that can go on, it's an independent track. In fact, it may have already been gone forward to the controller and be in place, I don't know.
Okay. Well, I think it's appropriate that we review it to see what the criteria, the specific categories, and how they rated. Or didn't rate. It just seems that many times things are rubber stamped, still in the process.
Right.
I don't think we're in the economic situation we can rubber stamp anything.
And you might ask why the charter requires that you be informed of this action. It is an action that's final, and I was just shown the section 245 that does say that those are not reviewable. These types of personnel actions by pensions boards are not reviewable by the council, other than for information. I think the thought was when the charter was revised that you received this just so that you know what action was taken. To the extent that subsequent actions by the council affect appointments and the like, you can take those into consideration.
But if the council doesn't agree and the body of the council votes against it, it still goes through
Yes,
because it's the commission's decision.
correct.
Then we replace the commission.
The mayor appoints those people, except for a few members of the fire and police pension plan. There are
A couple of
other mechanisms, correct?
Well, and the commission acts within the guidelines set by council. So council did have impact and was able to insert their opinion in the guideline process. So the commission has not exceeded the guidelines set by council.
And that is, I don't remember the 5% limit.
In most instances, the guidelines that are provided are the salary range and the steps within it. I don't know if there are any other notes that include.
I don't remember anything about that. Nothing about salary, just specific issues when we discuss salary, but not the broad issue of salary for general.
Merit pay guidelines have been in effect since 2003.
Right.
2000.
Since 2000. They have not been modified subsequently. The merit pay guidelines, if you wish, is a very appropriate subject to bring back into the ERC for discussion. We'd be happy to do that.
Well, I think, in every conversation I have with the mayor, he reminds me we're facing a $400 million deficit. He's talking about layoffs, he's talking about cutting services because of the economic downturn. And that's the concern I have. If we set a standard, then that, in good economic times, is good, but in bad economic times, when you're facing that kind of deficit, creates a serious situation. And if we give our employees no pay raise, and we give general managers a step, that creates a lot of unhappiness and disharmony. So I'm just trying to be fair and balanced with it. And I know that the stock market's gone up and down like a yo-yo. But the fact of the matter is, are we giving our employees that kind of increase? No. Would you like that, Z? 5%?
I don't have a nickel in this time.
No, I said, would you like, would you like a 5% increase in compensation?
Of course.
See, everybody would. No, Jude would. So I'm just saying that we have to be equitable and fair and balanced with it. That's my concern. And we don't have the evaluation, so I'd like to see the evaluation. So if I'm limited in what I can do with this, then I will follow the guidelines, what we can do with it, and ask for that information to be brought back to this committee. So we can note and file with the report back on the evaluation by the commission.
You should have that copy, and again, it's pursuant to the charter section that was read before, and you're entitled to have that and to see that. I would not recommend a public discussion since it is a personnel matter and an evaluation.
I don't have any qualms about that.
Right.
I think we should have the opportunity to review it, to see if it's just a rubber stamp, if there's actually some substance to it. Also, I understand, according to Mr. Perry, that the salary took effect July 1st, 2008, and why we're getting it in October, that's another question. If it took effect in July 08, why is it coming to this committee in October 14th?
This is for 07-08. So it's effective July 1 of 07.
07, so this is, why we, so we have old news now. July 07 to 08.
That's correct.
So what happened to 08, 09?
We haven't established the merit pay yet. Our review occurs about the third quarter of the calendar year.
Okay, so this, he's already gotten the money for this.
No, he hasn't received the money for it.
From July 08, July 07, 08?
That's correct.
So they get paid retro?
Yes.
Funny way to do it, isn't it?
The concept behind the merit pay ordinance was it would establish performance criteria, evaluate that performance criteria for the fiscal year.
Well, he did good during that time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, 7 or 8.
The revenues were good. You should have said that. I was happy with that. I'm talking about from this day forward, it's going in the tank. So we need to see that review. I'm also requesting that merit pay guidelines be considered in the ERC. So we can, because it's not only this general manager, but it encompasses all of them. So let's schedule that matter for ERC to have a discussion on that. So since this is 07, 08, and the revenues were fine during that time, I'm not going to object to that. I will approve that, support that, but at the same time, we need to see that report in this committee.
Certainly.
So dates are important. Mr. Perry had 08, but 07, 08, so that's the effective date, okay. Since we're already in October 08, that'll be good. Now, is that paid with interest or just paid 5%? No
It's
interest?
5%.
So it's a retro with no interest. Is that fair? Now I'm gonna fight for the employees. Put my union hat on. Don't they, when they do retro, don't they? We have to fight for that then.
Of our economic situation. Time might be.
I think that would be good to do. All right, we're being joined by Councilman Tony Cardenas, and we're completing item number 1. And it was from 07 to 08 on the general manager of the fire and police pension plan. I'm requesting back the review on the evaluation. So with your concurrence, we'll send that on the way. I'll let you go back. Thank you very much for your assistance here today. Number 2, please.
Item number 2 are reports from the City Administrative Officer and the City Attorney and an ordinance relative to the establishment of salary for the new class of Assistant General Manager at the airports.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right, plead your case.
Susan Harbach with CAO staff.
At the request of the Airports Department, the Personnel Department created the new class of Assistant General Manager Airports. What is before you is a recommendation that was approved by the EERC to set the salary at a range of $200,928 to $249,620.
Assistant General Manager. This would help our General Manager, I assume.
That's correct.
Okay, so the existing General Manager 1 will be promoted to a new position. So this is a promotion for someone. And then the Assistant General, or the existing General Manager 1 will be eliminated, and then it'll be Assistant General Manager?
No, there are actually 5 Deputy General Manager ones. This is a new class that was just created.
Okay, is this one going to be in charge of,
Essentially, the Chief Operating Officer, Finance and Budget, Information Technology, Construction Maintenance, Law Enforcement, all these functions will report to the Chief Operating Officer.
so there's going to be 5, the General Manager will have 5 assistants?
That is correct. As a Deputy General Manager wants.
All right, what are the rest of them going to do?
The respective function I just mentioned, each one of them have his or her own set of portfolios, including we have a deputy for properties and concessions, that's one. We have one for administration. We have one for facilities and planning, and one for operations.
Okay, so you got 1, 2, that's 4. Should be somebody else in there. So property, administration, facility, planning, ops.
And airport law enforcement.
Operations and maintenance. Okay, operations and maintenance. Finance and budget. Information technology. Administration. Commercial development and facilities environment planning. How many did they have before?
We have a total of 9 different classes, Deputy General Manager 1s and Deputy General Manager 2s.
Ms. Sampson, what's your status?
I'm a Deputy General Manager 1,
Okay, what are you in charge of?
Administration.
How come we have to pay when we have a bag on, take on the airplane?
We will,
Why don't you fix that?
we'll fix that.
No, I mean, it seems like, I know, I've spoken to the general manager of the airport, Jean Marie, Lindsay. They're doing the revamp of the airport. They're doing the modernization of the airport. And I know she mentioned she needed additional personnel to carry out that responsibility. That's what we brought her here for. So I'm not going to give you a hard time on that because I know it's necessary. The question I have is, I understand the air travel is down, fewer planes, landing fees, et cetera. How's that going to impact all this?
It should not. It's a cycle we go through, but by and large, we have to go forward with the development, as you know. This concept of having the chief operating officer is to concentrate on the capital development, getting into the financial markets to raise the fund we need to do the improvement.
Okay, I know she's got a great reputation for getting things done, and it's definitely going to be challenging with the economic situation. So I'm satisfied that I need that position. Mr. Cardenas? You?
How do these salary ranges compare to comparable responsibilities at other major airports in the country?
This is near the high end because in Southern California, the cost of living is as you know, on the high side. But this is also the idea of attracting, the best and the brightest to come to Los Angeles.
Well, also attracting the best and the brightest. It's usually the case that private industry, when somebody reaches a certain talent level and expertise and contacts and being known in the industry, private industry tends to be able to pull them away from public positions. Is that still the case with this kind of talent, that they're being made offers all the time to get quite a bit percentage higher salary working for private industry?
Councilman, that is a fact. We are competing with the private industry. A lot of the big engineering firms, in fact, recruit from within the airport industry with much higher salary and pull them away.
Now, when we lose somebody like that, in the interim of having that position be filled with somebody with the proper talent, do we tend to have to contract out to supplement those talents until we find another permanent replacement?
That is one avenue. The other is we anticipate someone's departure and start recruiting even before they leave.
But whenever there's a gap, don't we tend to have to, because we're an ongoing facility, don't we tend to have to supplement that missing talent with contracting out with some expertise?
We have done that.
And does that expertise tend to be at a higher cost?
Yes, very
Not
much so.
exclusively, but on average, if you're paying somebody a salary of $200,000 and all of a sudden that it's a vacant position and we haven't filled it yet, these firms that have a lot of talent, they don't contract them out at the rate that we pay salaries. Don't they contract them out at a much higher hourly
It
rate?
is at a much higher salary, and if you extrapolate that, it ranges anywhere from $500,000-$600,000 and above.
For the
on a yearly
equivalent
basis.
talent,
That's
on an annual
correct.
basis.
That's
The
correct.
reason why I wanted to have that dialogue with you is because I think it's important that people understand, and unless you've been in a position where you actually have to run an operation, public or private, when you have missing talent and you need that talent for ongoing decision-making, you have no choice but to fill it usually with much more expensive talent in the interim. And so just by your example, if we lose somebody that's being paid $228,000 and they're extremely talented and they get pulled away to some other position and we have that position vacant for a quarter, in 1 quarter we could possibly pay $228,000 for that contracted talent just in 3 months' work,
That's absolutely.
which normally we paid somebody a whole year's salary, 12 months for that work. Is
That's
that atypical or typical?
That's very typical.
Okay, thank you. I move the item.
Thank you very much. Matters approved.
Thank
Proceed
you.
again.
Thank you.
Number 3, please.
Item number 3 are reports from the CAO and the Department of Water and Power relative to an MOU amendment for the newly established duties description records in the electric distribution mechanic trainee class.
Good afternoon, Thomas Simonovsky from the Office of the CAO.
And Rose Garcia from the Department of Water and Power Labor Relations.
Before you today is a agreement between the Department of Water and Power and IBEW Local 18 in regards to a salary reduction for the electric distribution mechanic trainee class.
Say that part again.
It's a salary reduction.
Everybody hear that?
When was the last time DWP asked for a salary reduction?
I don't know, but I
Not sure.
volunteered to come present this one.
They volunteered
Because this is the first time I've heard of it.
because she's getting a salary increase. All right, Tom, go ahead.
And basically, the agreement between DWP and IBEW has to do with the current status of EDMT. Historically, that's a difficult to fill class. It involves trainees at high voltage. And over the years, the department has had high vacancy rates with that class. And the way the training program currently was undergone, it would include 2 components, an overhead component and an underground component. And this proposal would actually split the 2 and keep a separate line of trainee, and therefore a reduction in the salary for these programs.
What kind of reduction? How much?
Approximately 5% less. And this would
Except for the one we gave on the other side.
pretty much. And the department would basically realize approximately $245,000 in ongoing annual savings.
And these are the folks that are the line personnel on the utility lines and then the vaults? as I
High voltage
understand.
workers, or?
Yes, they both training programs work on high voltage, but one is overhead lines and the other one's underground lines.
These are the trainees of the overhead and underground.
So once they become permanent, then they get a big salary increase.
Then they become full journeyman level linemen. That's correct.
See, I don't have any problem paying those gentlemen or ladies. That's definitely dangerous work, especially when it's raining and they're out there doing that. So it saves $245,000.
Annually.
Oh, go ahead.
Annually, yes.
Okay. Anything? Huh?
What, are we currently hiring in this trainee position right now?
Yeah, we are currently hiring BDMT training classes. What it is we used to have the previous class that we just had was a combined trainee, and they were benchmarked against a full journeyman level salary. Well, we have split journeyman level salaries that are paid a little bit less when they specialize in either underground or overhead. So we just took the trainees that wanted to specialize and not do both and compared them to the lower journeyman level salary, which is where we got the savings. And we anticipate getting an increased number of recruits as a result. We just hired a most recent class. We completely filled the underground, which is the more desirable work for the linemen, and we were able to at least fill half of our overhead class, whereas before we were having difficulty because they didn't want to do both. So separating it and splitting the class gave us the opportunity to let people specialize in an area they wanted to work in.
So the next class, is it going to be split like that, or is it going to be different?
It's going to be split.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do now.
That's our
We're going to
goal.
have both of them in the class. And then
To
they
have split
pick
classes.
they pick within the class what their specialty is.
Correct. And then they follow the journeyman level class that's also split. They either become cable splicers or line mechanics.
And how long does it take from the time that they enter into this training process and they actually graduate from the training process
Takes approximately 3 years as trainees.
as trainees?
Yeah, maximum of 4.
So now that you've got the versatility of going above ground or underground, this will decide which way you're going to go.
Correct.
And underground's,
It tends to be the more desirable because of the fear of heights and other things that go with the lineman
well,
series.
get there eventually.
Yes.
So the last class was how many people?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but we filled the, I think they were trying for 20 in each of the class, and they were able to fill the underground, and they were able to fill half of the overhead.
So 3 years,
So there were slots available for the overhead.
And people didn't want them.
dangerous job.
But how many applications did they have for the overhead? Did they have overabundance of applications? And as they went through and said, "You're welcome to come to the class," they said, "No, no, 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 no."
Not if it was overhead, that's
So
right.
actually, if somebody applied and they weren't afraid of heights and they really wanted the job and they said yes, there was a slot available for them.
Absolutely.
So we had empty slots last time.
Yes.
When do you go through the process for the new slot?
Excuse me?
When do you go through the process for the new slots?
We will when the training class, I think every 3 months, they ask for a new list, and they go through use the same people, or same list, and they're able to take some of the people off the list because they took the underground jobs.
Are you the person that can explain all the details on how to get on the list and how to apply and all that stuff, or who is it over at DWP that can do that, or in personnel?
Either
I don't care
myself or
where.
Michelle Nagan can talk about the HR part of it.
Okay, I need one of you to come to my office because I have people who live in the San Fernando Valley who have told me time and time again they would bend over backwards to work for DWP because they work for private industry in the electrical industry or what have you, and they have experience and they tell me about all their different certificates that they've got and all this stuff, and they keep telling me that they can't get a job with DWP. So
We'll be happy
I'm not
to explain.
complaining
No,
to you.
we'll be happy
I'm
to
just
explain.
saying I'm frustrated and I have a job.
Yeah, we still have
I
the
can
civil
imagine
service
how-
process.
I understand, but if you had empty slots, then
Yeah.
don't you go past the civil service and then you go to the open public when you have empty slots?
Not necessarily the open public, but we continue down the list. You exhaust the promotional list, and then you go to the open list. Because a lot of our feeder classes, the people on the list are from the electrical craft helpers, so they're currently city employees on the list.
But obviously, if you have empty slots, I would venture to assume that you exhausted the first list, the second list, the third list, the fourth list, and the class starts with empty slots. How does somebody who works for private industry, who wants to work for DWP, get into a position where they can fill one of those slots?
Eventually, when we work down the list to get to the open list, then we can reach them.
There's currently an existing list, so that they're drawing from.
We can explain it in more detail You want to?
No, that's fine, that's fine. I have many more questions than that.
Yeah, we can-
So what I need you to do, Eduardo from my office is either outside the door or in here. He's outside. Please introduce yourself to him.
Will do.
Let him know that I want a full explanation so I can understand how a layperson who does not work for the city
Gets to become
apply
a
for
lineman
these
for
kinds of
water and
things,
power.
gets on a list so that we don't have empty slots.
Sure,
Because if we have empty slots, that means that we wanted somebody in there, right?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You approve, Mr. Hart?
Move the item.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item number 4 are reports from the City Administrative Officer and City Attorney and an ordinance relative to an ordinance amendment to provide cost of living salary adjustments for various classes.
Name those classes, please.
Certainly. Chief of Police, General Manager Harbor Department, General Manager Airports, General Manager Los Angeles City Employees Retirement System, General Manager Department of Fire and Police Pensions, General Manager Department of Water and Power, and Council Aid 1 through 6.
Now, we talk about the West Los Angeles City Legislature. Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, Susan Harbach with CAO staff. This is a recommendation to amend the non-represented employee salary ordinance to include cost of living adjustments for the general manager positions that were just named. When the non-rep report was approved by council back in July, it did not include those general managers because this office had interpreted language in the charter such that the commissions of those departments would be the ones to approve the COLAs. Subsequent to the approval of that report, however, the city attorney opined that it was actually the city council who had full authority to provide those cost of living adjustments. So we are now coming forward with this recommendation. The cost of living adjustments that are recommended are the same COLAs that were approved for all other general managers, which is 2% effective 7/107, 2% 1/108, and 3% 7/108. Additionally, there's a recommendation to provide the same cost of living adjustments to the council aides 1 through 6. At the time that the non-rep salary report was approved by the council, those individuals were part of a bargaining unit. They have since disbanded and are back to being non-represented employees.
Were they paying dues to that bargaining unit?
No, they were not.
So they don't get a rebate? Since they never paid any dues?
Correct.
Hello? Chief, am I sorry that? I'm discussing your salary, right? Maybe he wanted that. Oops, me. So this is no surprise. The question I have is, do we have the funds to cover this?
What's the police department budget, the general fund budget? Didn't it round off at about 1.3 billion? And they have to figure out how to absorb 22,000 for their chief?
Yes.
I think they're going to do it.
Well, I wasn't all concerned about the police department. I'm talking about the other departments.
Well, the council aides are $390,000 spread across 15 council offices, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
What about the others?
it's,
The rest are proprietary departments. They will be paid out of their own funds.
And they all have the funds available for this?
Yes,
I mean, it's all part of their budgets?
yes.
yeah, it'll be absorbed by the current allotted amounts, right?
Correct.
We're not, no adjustments to the
No.
general fund contribution to the council offices or the chief, police department. right?
Correct.
Because it goes back to '07, and then it goes to '08, in July '08, so they're gonna end up getting a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that was money carried over from '07 and all these sections to '08? Because we're now in '08, '09, and we're dating this back to July '07.
For the general managers, just to clarify, for the council aides, it's actually only 2 adjustments, the 1/108 and the 7/108.
So that's all in this fiscal budget year?
Calendar year.
Calendar.
No,
year.
110, yeah. So 6 months are in last budget year.
Yes.
So in other words, whatever age, whether they're council aides or some of the other categories, there's money in all those pots we're not gonna come up with, we don't have money to pay in one agency or one department or one section. In other words, everyone has money to cover this.
Correct.
You check that?
Yes.
Okay.
Questions?
All right. Did you already get yours?
Yes, sir.
How, what was that under?
I knew the non-rep report.
So you're getting this now, or you already had it?
No, we got ours, the council aides did not get theirs.
Why didn't you join that team?
Move the item.
You were non-rep, right?
Yes.
I'm just
They were
getting
represented for
confused with
a
rep and
period of
non-rep,
time.
and then the rep goes, no non-rep. It didn't work. All right, so the item's been moved. And the total, do you have the total package on this? How much for everything?
If you look at the fiscal impact on the notes, sir, we have the totals on the bottom.
We can say it out loud. Don't be shy.
The total general fund impact is $22,000 for the chief of police salary and approximately $390,000 for the council aides.
And that's the total for everything. I thought there were some others in here.
The remainder are proprietary departments.
And what about, what's the total package? Everything? Total allocation?
I do not have the numbers offhand for the proprietaries.
Maybe about 500,000?
No, the police adjustment is $22,000, but for probably the same amount, so probably right around $100,000 or so.
So for,
But Lacers is a proprietary department?
Yes.
the general manager, okay, now let me ask you the question. Earlier we discussed on the police and fire pension, what that gentleman was receiving, the 5%. Now, does Lacer general manager get less? Or is there another category?
Well, what was discussed earlier for fire and police pensions was the merit pay adjustment.
This isn't merit pay.
No, this is a COLA adjustment.
Okay, so do these folks get a merit pay on top of this?
If the commission votes for one, yes.
Okay, so do we know if they voted for those or not?
No, I have not seen one come through for Lacers.
What about for the other proprietary departments? And the chief of police? So I'm thinking that there's a COLA, and then on top of that, there's the merit. But most employees don't get the merit, they just get the COLA.
Correct.
So certain categories get the merit. Only general managers?
Only general managers.
Police Commission has not voted on the merit increase.
Okay,
And that comes out of their existing budgets?
correct.
And we're broke. He says the mayor's
I'm
not.
not sure $100,000 will solve the problem.
I'm sure it won't. Keep adding them up, it will. All right, so you gonna move this item?
Move the item.
All right, thank you. Number 5.
Item number 5 are reports, joint reports from the Chief Legislative Analyst and the CAO relative to proposed fee subsidy policy for special events and related matters.
All right.
Good afternoon.
This is the attorney watching over your shoulders.
He'll tell me if I'm saying anything that I shouldn't be saying. I'm Lynn Ozawa with the city Chief Legislative Analyst.
You forgot where you were.
You know, I used to be with the CAO for a time, and I just had a momentary flashback. I'm sorry.
You were ORS for a while, too.
I'm sorry?
ORS, it was called ORS?
Yes, I wasn't there during that time, and I was also with DOT.
Oh. How about
Yes.
DWP?
No, never there.
So you never seen the big bucks yet?
No, no, I haven't.
A matter of time. All right, go ahead.
This is the special events fee subsidy report, and this report has been through the Public Works Committee, and now it's being sent to you for your approval. The Public Works Committee approved staff's recommendations, and basically that was to have the special nonprofit special event sponsor pay for 50% of the city's fees and costs, except for block parties, and then farmers markets were also taken off the table for further study. That was the action that was taken by the Public Works Committee at its last meeting. And part of the recommendations was to approve position authorities for 4 positions in street services so that they could set up a one-stop special event permit office. And the position authorities that are being recommended are 1 clerk typist, 1 senior clerk typist, 1 street use inspector, and 1 senior street use inspector 3. And Tom Carabello from Street Services can give you more detail on what the function of the Special Events Permit Office would do if you'd like.
I have a question regarding special events fees. I receive requests in my district for special events. For example, a church is going to have a carnival, they're going to have a festival, and we sign the special events, and the cost of $2,500, $3,000. And I go to these events, there's no DOT, there's no barricades, there's nothing. And when I look at, when they do those reports, they show a cost for each one of those events. Now, if you're blocking off Hollywood Boulevard for the Academy Awards, clearly there's an expense. If you're bringing in law enforcement and other city entities, but many times a block party, the people somehow get the barricades, they put the barricades up, they block the street with their cars, they do the barricade, the block party, and there's no city resources used. But when the special events motion comes through, it shows a couple $1,000. And I've always questioned why we're tabulating these costs when in fact the city, if anything, people are picking up barricades and putting barricades out there. There was one recently at St. Bernardine's Church over on Valley Circle. To my knowledge, there were no city resources whatsoever, but the special events motion was like $3,000. And I'm saying, why are we putting this cost in when they're doing it on private property, they get a permit, and it didn't seem very logical. So while we're going to establish now more employees to coordinate this, when we look at the big focus of special events, a block party, a festival of some sort, where there's no city resources, if anything, a barricade or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, how do we come up with all this? Other than the Emmys or go to Staples, and they've always got that road blocked off, Olympic Boulevard blocked off for some event between Milwaukee and Staples. Department personnel, police, and DOT, I can see expense there. I don't know if they're paying for it or not. For Dodger Stadium, where they got a ton of police and DOT out, I don't know how much they're paying or we're paying. It doesn't seem balanced. Nonprofits, a church, a temple, something to that effect. Can you explain that part?
Sure. Good afternoon. Tom Carabello, Bureau of Street Services, Investigation Enforcement. Usually on the motion, it directs us or directs various departments on what their responsibility are. For Bureau of Street Services, normally it's the delivery of the barricades. There are assignments that are directly to DOT where they're supposed to provide DOT officers. They're the ones, that's not done through our Bureau. The motion.
It says if needed.
If needed. And normally, normally they're getting a copy of the motion. We, in addition, notify DOT of the motion of the event. We provide the barricades, and DOT's responsibility for going out and providing the DOT officers. Currently, we only have 1 person on special events. In fact, that's part of the problem. It really requires us, special events really requires us to have several investigators on that section to be able to go out to the event on the day of the event, prior to the event, to make inspections, to make sure that if there's any safety issues that we address them, and the same the day of the event. Currently, we don't have a staffing to do that. There's only 1 person assigned to special events. But getting back to DOT, they receive a copy of the motion as we do, and it's their responsibility to send their staff out there. As far as Bureau Street Services, we do provide the barricades when it's instructed per motion. Sometimes we will go out there and set up the barricades. On many occasions, we're receiving calls the day of, 30 minutes before the event, requesting, notifying us that they have this event, they haven't received barricades, and then we go out of our way, we make sure that we deliver them, and we put them up as best we can.
Do they ever have a process where the group itself goes and picks up barricades?
Yes, we do.
And then returns them?
Yes, we do. Per motion.
Because see, those groups, I can't see charging them since they're doing it all themselves, especially if it's on a private property. But they go through whatever permit process they have to do to have this
Right.
festival.
And usually, we're directed per motion to just provide the barricades at no charge and all those charges. Majority of the time, the charges, are waived.
So with this, the bottom line is the Academy Awards. Is the Academy Awards considered a nonprofit organization?
Yes, they are, because they have a nonprofit foundation that is
Benefit
actually,
from the event? Does that organization benefit from the event?
the foundation does not. I mean, it does not make a profit. It's not profitable.
But the Academy Awards are considered a benefit event?
The foundation runs the event, and they do not make a profit from the event.
Well, somebody's making a profit.
That's not being donated to charity.
But someone's making a profit from the Academy Awards. And when we block out Hollywood Boulevard with a ton of police officers and DOT and everything else, and we absorb all that cost, or the Emmys or some other major event, or the triathlon, or the marathon, or some of these events where there's a tremendous personnel deployment. In addition to, I've been to the triathlon, I haven't participated in the Ironman, where they swim in the ocean, and then they bike ride, and then they do the run, all the way from Venice Beach to downtown, every intersection with either an Explorer, or DOT, or a police officer, tremendous expense. But when they have that nonprofit, all of a sudden it falls into a different category, and we're spending a lot of money on those events. How do we sort those out? Like Academy Awards, you're gonna pay for all the resources. We'll give you all the resources, you're gonna pay for it. Instead of the way it is now. Because if you're looking at $100,000, and if I'm talking about a church event or a temple event, where the barricades they pick up, they post the barricades in their parking lot, and we're writing off $3,000, which is really inappropriate for us to do. It should be no write-off, because they're picking everything up, and they're paying for their own insurance. I think we have to be honest when we're doing this, and
So-
not be somewhat underhanded.
So, Councilman, you're referring to the dollar amount that's in the special event motions?
I think that's where they come up with this.
Okay, because that's an estimated amount of the city's costs. It could be less, it could be more, but that's an estimate of city services.
Well, the times I've been to these events, no one is showing up to do anything, but it's in the special event motion. And I've argued with my legislative team many times, well, this is the policy, but no one showed up. The barricades are there, no DOT, no police, no nothing, a nice quiet event. Well, why are we putting in that form, that special event motion, which then calculates this $5 million or $10 million, whatever we're talking about? I think we have to be candid to say, we're gonna do something. If a nonprofit comes to us, it's a true nonprofit, they wanna do an event, and we want to, the Cancer Lymphoma Society, the Arthritis Society, March of Dimes, whatever the case may be, and they want to do something in the community, and we support that, and we give them the waiver, we give them a special event permit. We're limiting what we can do now. I think that broad category of nonprofit is too broad, and people utilize that so they don't have to pay.
I also want to go back to comment on your earlier comment about the marathon and triathlon, that the Los Angeles Marathon and the Los Angeles Triathlon do pay for all their fees and city services.
Well, they're supposed to pay. But if you look at, are they actually paying, or are they saying we didn't make enough money?
They do now.
They do.
They haven't in the past.
I led the charge on the debate several years ago when it was under two ownerships ago, and it was then that we had the CAO and the CLA get the actual numbers, the real number, not the estimated number, not what they think it is, and then that marathon owner agreed with the city because we gave them an extension to be able to do business as the LA Marathon. And at that point, they started to pay a correct amount, an amount that was verified by the city. The current marathon owner, before they weren't. Before there was the estimate, and it, in my opinion, the follow-through and the completion of that process was not complete. Now we have a complete process, and the current marathon owner that just came through council recently, that marathon owner has agreed to pay all related costs to the city. They're not dumb. They had the city make sure that they let them know ahead of time what those related costs shall be, and then so they've agreed to that.
That was what I was referring to. It wasn't always that case.
It was not.
No, it was not always the case. The prior contracts for the LA Marathon had a specific amount in there that was much less, quite frankly, than what the actual cost ended up being.
But with all due respect, even the cost, I guess because they weren't going to have somebody pick it up, even when we looked at the cost estimates, even though they were limited as to how much they were going to cover, this private entity, even that wasn't exactly the way it should be. Now, it's much more accurate all the way around.
So what we're going to do with this is have some inspectors. Now, is there going to be overtime for these inspectors, or are they going to adjust their hours accordingly?
No, we would adjust our hours. During the day, they can, they would go out and do the pre-inspection, and the day of the event, we would have one of them go out on that day and make a check of all the different events, or at least all the major events that we feel may be an issue.
Okay.
Also, citywide events are going to be in a separate category that won't be taken from individual council members' pots. Right now, we've anticipated $100,000 per council district to subsidize special events within their district. But citywide events, which are much larger, like the Academy Awards and Emmys that you spoke about, there would be other money set aside in the budget to cover those costs.
So I think when we do these special event motions for nonprofits like churches and temples and religious institutions and schools, they're having a festival at a school, that there's a condition, you pick up the barricades, deliver those barricades back, you pay for insurance, and we don't calculate a fee, because there is no fee. And if they want DOT to direct traffic, then we put in that they would pay for that. But the trouble I have with it, I can show you motion after motion after motion, where it puts this as needed, no one ever shows up, and the calculation is there. If they want to pick up barricades at their expense and post them in their parking lot, or they want to have a block party on a cul-de-sac, which I think is a neighborly thing to do, and there's no DOT there, no police there, maybe the senior lead stops by, which is the senior lead for the area with the neighborhood council, to use from our $100,000 fund, I think we're going to start having this argument back and forth, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. There has to be reasonableness to it.
My understanding is that your fund wouldn't be charged until the event was over and they knew exactly what services were needed and were expended.
So they'll only be charged on expended costs, not estimated.
Isn't that true, Ron?
Currently, it's estimated on the motion.
Yes,
If I may,
it's estimated on the motion.
If I may, Peter Echeverria from the City Attorney's Office. Chief Assistant City Attorney.
Chief Assistant. Did you get promoted?
There would be, I don't know, about 9 years ago.
Give him a merit pay.
All right. Yeah, where's my 5%? The proposal is that there would be no motions anymore. There would be applications directly to Bureau of Street Services, and the billings would be on a cost incurred basis.
Okay, so that's very clear, cost incurred basis.
Correct.
So we wouldn't have to be doing
This
motions. So what's Zumadog going to complain about?
This was probably driven by Zumadog, unfortunately, rather than the real reason why we should do it is to have a better system. I'd like
I
to.
didn't know that part of it.
I was kidding about the Zumadog part, but so instead of doing motions, it would be handled in the budget process as a one-time budget action at the beginning of the fiscal year. Each council office will start with $100,000 in order for them to monitor how many special events they're going to be assisting, the city would be sponsoring.
But how are we going to know if it's not coming through our office?
No, but that's my next point. So therefore, the council offices with, rather than a motion, with some type of acknowledgement or letter preempting the okay of that special event where the city is sponsoring, correct?
There would be coordination with the council office by Bureau of Street Services as the applications are received and as they're processed and as the billings are processed.
Now,
there would not be an approval by the council office.
Okay.
Because legally we can't provide that.
Woodley Park, what about that?
No, that would be out of my office.
It would?
Yeah, I would, that's a perfect example. We have a deaf festival. It happens to be at a park that's large and it's in my district. They can accommodate. It's something that's sponsored by my office, et cetera. I would imagine that I would have to, for example, talk to the council president and ask him if in the next fiscal year, since we draw people from outside the state, outside the county, within the county and the city, I would probably have to let them know this is more like the Academy Awards where it's broader than the city of Los Angeles. So I would have to make that argument. But until I make that argument.
There's no city resources.
There are.
No, there are. Yeah, Parks and Recs and things of that nature, sure. But the thing is, that's a perfect example where that might be a gray area one. If I want to err on the side of saying my 100,000 can handle it, then I, as the sixth council district person, can go ahead and do that. Say when I'm not here, the next council member says, look, I'm okay with the event, but I'm not going to pay for it out of my funds. Then that person would probably have to petition the council president to put it on the other list.
What about our 4th of July programs that we do?
Well, there is also, and the CLA will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's also a pot of money that will be placed, I think 1.5 or 1.5 million for citywide events. And if it qualifies as a citywide event, it would not come from the district fund, it would come from that citywide event. We will, part of the instructions is for CLA, CAO, and our office to work on a definition of what citywide events would be and come back to council for approval of that. It might include a list of events that historically have constituted and been seen as, perceived as being citywide events. So that would be the case. If I may go back to one of the questions that was asked earlier, Mr. Chairman, about the nonprofits and the fact that some nonprofits put on events that actually do have some benefit to commercially to others. The intent and the manner in which we propose to write the ordinance is that a nonprofit could qualify for the subsidy, but not if the proceeds from the event are actually going to profit some commercial venture. So there would need to be some research, if you will, and background done as to what the proceeds are actually going to be used for, and that would have to qualify on that basis.
So on that example, Mr. Cheverria.
By the way, I have been corrected. It's 1 million for citywide events.
Okay, but in the recommendation, so for example, using the Academy Awards as an example, if this would pass going forward, the city would have to start letting the Academy Awards know that we have a different system, so we need to get down to some more details to understand, A, what category they're going to come in. Obviously, it's citywide and beyond. B, whether or not they're going to be okay with our system, which this ordinance wouldn't, by passage of these recommendations, we would not be precluding ourselves from treating, for example, the Academy Awards in a special category beyond all of what is discussed today at a future time.
There are a number of other events, for example, you mentioned the marathon and the triathlon, for which we have agreements, and those agreements provide for the services that we will provide and how they will pay us if we provide additional services and the like. It's possible to treat, for example, the Oscars or the Emmys differently and have an agreement with them. If not, then they would come in for
so at the least,
kind of a request.
At the least, by the work that's been done by the staff and the recommendations that are before us, at the least what we'll have is we'll have a better separation of which events are district events, a better separation and understanding of what we're going to call citywide events, and then let's call a category of other special events that will have special negotiations, agreements, contracts, and possibly even council motions in the future for those specific events.
Correct.
Which today, it's a lot more blended than that.
Yes.
Would the 50% fee waive be made after the actual incurred costs, or determined, or before? The 50% fee would be made after the actual cost?
It would be made when the actual costs are determined.
So it's after the event?
Yes.
Because $100,000 doesn't go that far.
Well, it goes in my district, because according to the analysis, all I spend is about $67,000. I like this. Move the item. Exactly. So technically speaking, if you look at my number of 67,000, and if everything happened after this passes in a 12-month period, then I'm looking at my expenditures for my district would be half of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't have that.
And there's also another category that I didn't mention, which are the First Amendment events that are handled through the police department, and they would be funded separately, because there's no question that the city would
We
pay
have
for
to
them.
do
Yes,
that. Yes.
absolutely.
Okay. Not that we have to, we want to do that.
We want
We
to.
want to respect the First
Yes,
Amendment rights.
Yes.
And we do. We never do that because we have to.
no.
What's so funny?
No on the record, sir.
Fine, it's on the record.
Good. Because we respect the Constitution and
That's
everything.
right, free speech. Free speech.
So,
Good. Say some more words.
that's all the questions I have.
All right, so now we're going to hire new city employees, and this office is going to be out of Public Works, Bureau of Street Services.
But we're not,
Jim Robertson.
we're not officially adding personnel, right?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
For
And-
That's
positions?
why it's in this committee.
And part of the benefit of these new positions and this new system is that there's going to be better tracking of events as they're occurring, so that DOT, the police department, fire department know where these events are happening. And then they're going to overlap that with filming permits, so that there isn't duplication of events in a district.
I'm sorry. What I meant by that is the net effect in the city isn't it greater efficiency? Even though we're adding 4 new bodies, we're going to have greater efficiency, because even though somebody might not be handling this as a personnel full-time equivalent on this stuff, somebody is having to deal with this in various departments, and that is going to be reduced so that those people can actually focus on a reduced consumption of their time on these matters.
Or not dealing with it.
Yeah, or not dealing with it.
Yes.
So the bottom line is the net effect is efficiencies for the city.
Absolutely.
It's efficiencies for the city, but it's also efficiencies for the groups that want to have the events, because there's one place for them to go to.
And this will be out of Bureau of Street Services. What section of Bureau of Street Services?
Investigation and enforcement.
Investigation.
So they're going to be under you?
Yes, sir.
Are you like the chief?
I'm the assistant chief. Gary Harris is the chief.
Did he get a 5% increase too?
I believe he did, but I haven't.
That's why you're working it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that made you come in here all worthwhile after that. One question, right? Yeah, right.
Nice to be candid. Okay, what's the phone number for investigation enforcement?
It's 213-847-6000.
Okay, so how long do you think till this gets, once it goes to the council and gets kicked in until it implements? How long do you think?
How long did you implement?
Well, you know, I think we're still going to have to
Excuse me,
meet.
let me, I might be able to help answer that question. The bottom line is, even though this passes, we don't anticipate starting it officially till the new fiscal year of July 1st, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the plan? Okay.
Yeah. Because then we'd have to do hybrid budgets and all that stuff and calculate backwards. So I just assumed that this would take effect starting July 1st, because through the budget process, we would have to budget the $100,000 per council district, $1 million for special events, et cetera, et cetera.
Everything's status quo until then.
Well, actually, the 100,000 has been budgeted for this year.
Okay.
It can be used not only for special events, but for other types of fee subsidies. And that's what it's.
But with all due respect,
for.
I don't think the council office is looking at the numbers for all the 15 council offices. It doesn't look like we have a very, very good chance of adhering to the 100,000 across the board,
That's
across
very
all
true.
15 council offices. So my point is, once we do this formally, this will be the proper way in which we harness and curtail how we're doing our special events, and we start to identify how many special events we're actually subsidizing in the city, right? Because right now, it's just, there is no upper or lower. People just do it because they're approached by good organizations. Hopefully, these are great events, and then we just do it.
Right.
Right.
So until this goes through budget and gets approved in the next fiscal year, we're going to continue writing motions.
Yes.
Nothing's changing.
Yes.
This is a good exercise in the future.
I know.
So we will approve in the bodies again, if we can.
It's interesting that normally, the way government works, we usually do the policy first and then get the budget part in second. But this time, during this budget cycle, we tried to do the budgeting part, but we didn't put the policy in place and the bodies and put them in the right place to get these efficiencies, et cetera. So unfortunately, we went backwards.
Actually, we've been working on this policy for, I think, 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, but we didn't get the policy done before the last budget
Yeah.
cycle.
No, that's
Therefore,
very true.
the budget cycle preceded the policy conclusion.
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out.
Which is backwards. We usually try to do the policy, and then we squabble about how we're going to actually show how we're going to get the budget in order.
All right, so give me the number of people with the status, the positions again.
1 clerk typist, 1 senior clerk typist, 1 street use inspector, and 1 senior street use inspector 3.
What the category are you?
I'm the assistant chief.
You're above 3.
Yes, sir.
After 3 comes
Chief,
chief?
assistant chief.
Okay. And then next after you is chief.
Yes, sir.
All right.
It's actually chief 1, chief 2.
It's a lot of chiefs.
There's only 2.
Okay, so the recommendation will be to approve the CLACA recommendation and move that through. So this will go to council for another review, and then you're going to have to go to the budget and finance as you submit your budget with these allocations.
I think this goes to Budget and Finance before it goes to council.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but then it's going to have to go to budget and finance again, and the mayor's going to put this in his budget, so this can be done, correct?
So even if the mayor doesn't put in the budget, the council will put in the
Council
budget because the council passed the motion.
Yeah. So
Because the
Friday-
council makes the budget, not the mayor.
Well, he submits it, and we review it and analyze it and dissect
But
it.
that's his recommendation. He's not a legislator, he doesn't legislate
That's
the
correct,
budget.
but he's the one who submits it to us.
You got it.
So the numbers that will come with this
You
will
could
affect.
even, the council could even implement the budget portion of this on an interim basis if that's what your desire is.
No, it'd be too confusing, because then we have to do motions, no motions, and this and that, the other.
We'll take that into account.
I just,
No, that won't
Maybe we
work.
might, but in that process, yes.
Now, do you
it's not on
have
its-
staff groomed, or you have to go through outside testing and all that to bring in folks?
Well, I think by that time, we'll have a new list. I think we're down, that list is about to expire, so.
Okay.
We have one investigator now working that section.
Do you guys do the street racks also?
We do the street racks, illegal vending, illegal dumping, encroachments, lane closures, hazardous waste inspections, overload inspections, and I can go on and
You're
on.
very busy.
We do a little bit of everything.
All right. All right, thank you. Mayor,
Move the recommendation.
thank you. Number 6, please.
Number 6 is a city attorney report and an ordinance relative to a revision to the LA Ad Code to allow voluntary contributions to deemed individual retirement accounts.
Good afternoon. Richard Bob for the City Attorney's Office. The council asked my office to draft an ordinance that would allow for the deferred compensation program to add deemed IRA and deemed Roth IRA accounts to the deferred compensation program. The impetus for this change began when there was a change in federal law that allowed it. Previously to this change in federal law, a city employee could have a deferred compensation account and save for retirement through there, and then also go to an investment firm and open an IRA or a Roth IRA with the investment firm. The change in federal law allowed the deferred compensation program to compete with the investment firm. What the the advantage of this is that people generally, let me backtrack for a second. People generally refer to their Roth account or their deferred compensation account or their IRA account as though it were an account with an investment. And it really isn't. I think it's helpful to think of this in terms of it's a pot of money that allows you to do some things with it according to certain rules. And the rules for the three things are very different. Ultimately, your account is with a specific investment, such as a life insurance or a stock or a mutual fund or something like that. The Roth and the IRA accounts allow certain kinds of investments, and the deferred compensation accounts allow certain kinds of investments. And right now, if you're a participant, which I hope you are, you know that there are probably 20 some odd investment categories that you can invest however you choose to invest your money. Because the city has such a large deferred compensation program, we can offer the same investments that investment firms can offer you, only we can offer them at wholesale prices instead of retail prices. So it ultimately benefits the city employees. Under this new program, the same investments that we currently have for the deferred compensation would be available for a Roth or an IRA account. And they would pay the same fees for the investment. But each account has its own transactional charges, so that people who invest in, who have deferred compensation account and pay a percentage for the administration of their fee, that administration fee would only go towards the deferred compensation account. There would be an additional fee if they wanted an IRA or a Roth IRA, so that there wouldn't be any crossover.
So more fees.
Well, more fees if you have more money. See, what this allows you to do is, depending upon your individual circumstances, you're allowed, most people are allowed $5,000 that they can contribute to their IRA or Roth IRA, in addition to what they contribute to their deferred compensation. There's some adjustments. If you're in the reserves, you get another $1,000. If you're over 50, you get another $1,000. If you were recently employed by a company and went bankrupt, you get an extra $3,000. So if you want to save even more, this allows you to save even more. The advantage to city employees is you don't have to go to an outside investment house. You can do it right here in the city.
So, in a nutshell, the IRS code was changed, and we made sure our language allowed our employees to take advantages of the current IRS code.
That's correct.
Okay, move the item.
Well, I'm not so happy about that.
Just because you got more than one pension, you just don't know what to do with your money, dude.
I thought the IRA, if you had a pension, that you couldn't take the IRA off your income tax?
Well, there are different rules and this gets real technical, and I'd have to have the codes out in front of me to give you the complete answer. There are, I think that's the main difference between the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA is when it's taxed.
Right.
Each one of them has to be taxed eventually.
Right.
But they have separate rules as to when they're taxed. And the theory is that you pay the tax when you have the lowest income so that you pay less tax on it. And that's the government's way of encouraging people to save for retirement. But that was traditionally what I had heard as well, that if you have a pension, you can't get an IRA. I believe that's been changed.
I think you can get the IRA, but I don't know if you can have the tax benefit.
I believe that's
Ms. King, is that
right.
correct?
Right, yes.
Stephen?
So,
Stephen, come up forward. You're
Just a yes or a no.
You're knowledgeable. Are you supposed to be?
so with a traditional IRA, okay, you can put money into it, but if your income level is above a certain amount, then you wouldn't be able to write that off of your taxes. You wouldn't be able to write the contribution off. Right, you could still put it into, you could put money into the IRA.
Right.
The earnings would grow tax deferred. You just don't get to write that off of your current year income tax, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is.
See, not everybody has your problem, Dennis. So for the other 39,900 employees, I will move the item.
I'm not so sure. Okay, so this gives them opportunities for additional investments. And I also heard a report recently that when they're making those investments, are they getting guidance from the city staff, or are they just like rolling the dice?
Oh, no, they
Give them some direction?
they would get, They would get guidance from Great West Retirement Services, and that's the firm that we contract with to give information about the plan and to help with education.
They know what they're talking about, hopefully.
They're all licensed.
We need to clarify, they have the right to take their advice, but they can do as they please as long as they stay within the limits.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, now you can move the item.
Move the item.
Thank you. I need to talk to you also about that.
Yes, I know.
Okay. All right, number 7, please.
Item number 7 are reports from the CAO and the mayor relative to the acceptance of a grant to support the Los Angeles Minority Business Opportunity Center program.
Is this going to cost us any money? Going to cost us any money?
Going to cost the mayor some money.
Oh.
Yeah, move the item.
So general fund will provide, the general fund's going to take $255,000. CAO funding of according to CAO funding of $255,000 provided. Oh, it's in the budget. So this is going to help out people with jobs. Ladies, go ahead.
It's going to help minority businesses secure.
Don't PR, please.
My name is Linda Smith, and I'm the director of the Minority Business Opportunity Center, referred to as LA MBOC. And our primary focus is to provide brokering and matchmaking services to secure actual contracts and financing for minority businesses. And our annual goal from our federal partner is $130 million a year in contracts and financing. So far this year, in contracts, since April, we've secured $40 million in contracts for minority businesses in the LA region. And obviously, in this economy, it's very, very important to make sure that small businesses continue to get businesses so they continue to create jobs and create livable wage jobs for the residents of our city.
Well stated. And you would like to say?
My name is Amber Johnson, and I'm with the CAO's office.
And what do you think about this?
Actually, the CAO's office is recommending the acceptance of this grant award and the related transaction costs and the resolution authority for 6 positions. We ask that you move the CAO's recommendations.
6 positions.
Including...
Are these additional positions or existing positions?
Existing positions.
Paid by the grant.
Yes.
All but $81,442 that the CAO recommends that the mayor's office absorb that amount.
Actually, the general fund portion is $109,012.
But that's aside from the $181,000, right?
That's, yes.
Yes, got it. All right, move the item.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It is done. And we help out more businesses, and we go to number 8, our final item of the day.
And item number 8 is a city administrative officer report in response to motion Alarcon Garcetti relative to the feasibility of establishing a hardship loan program.
Good afternoon. Thomas Simonovsky of the Office of the CAO. This item before you is a CAO report.
Complete that, though. You didn't complete the sentence.
The hardship loan program would enable the Los Angeles City Employees Retirement System members to borrow against retirement contributions to prevent the foreclosures of their homes.
Okay, yeah, that's important. Go ahead.
Okay. This item is a CAO report that was initiated by a council motion, and basically it's to report back on the feasibility of establishing a hardship loan program. And it would actually apply to members of the LA City Employment Retirement System, or LACERS, and it would allow them to borrow against retirement contributions, and it would be for purposes of preventing home foreclosures. And the report has a number of items here regarding the feasibility aspect. We'd have to take a look at the tax qualified status of having such a program, any fiduciary responsibility concerns, where the funding may or may not come from, design considerations, taking a look at administrative costs and having a risk assessment, and also engaging the meet and confer process. And currently, there are some alternative options to a loan hardship program. Right now, city employees could take advantage of a deferred compensation plan, loan, or withdrawal from their current account, or they can utilize the Employee Assistance Program, which offers counseling services available to them. And there's also federal assistance programs that are currently underway that will allow employees eventually to, perhaps take advantage of. Most notably, there's HR 3221, which earmarks, I believe it's $3.9 billion nationally, and it's my understanding that the City of Los Angeles may be in a good position to secure some of that funding to utilize here in the city. And so ultimately, our recommendation is to defer establishing a loan hardship program at this time and direct city employees to utilize some of these alternative options that are available or will be available to them.
I think one of the items here, it talks about a 7%, if they borrow against it, interest rate is 7%, which is high.
Well, that number is probably...
Difference, isn't there?
Well, that 7% would probably be based on the LACER's anticipated retirement return on the investment side, and so if any loan... Mm-hmm.
No, but technically speaking, if they borrow against their retirement, say they take the maximum of $50,000, mm-hmm. and their retirement money is still earning, right? They don't put that $50,000 dormant. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So they don't exactly take $50,000 out of the retirement. They borrow against that. So that means that the $50,000 that's in their retirement, say they have $200,000 in there and they borrow against $50,000, that $50,000 continues to earn just like the other the rest of the $200,000 in their retirement.
Hi, Tom Moutis, Assistant General Manager of LACERS. And that would depend on the source of funding that's pointed out in the CAO report. If it was coming out of their account, it indeed would impede our ability to make our investment return. So that's one of the open questions from the report.
Yeah, but that's the point. If somebody has $200,000 in a retirement account and they say, I need to take out the max because I'm losing my house, they take $50,000 out. LACERS is getting 7% return on that $50,000 that they borrow.
Correct. We assume an 8% return, whether that's through the investment or whether that would be through interest payment on the loan.
Okay, call it 8% in my example. So they take out $50,000 loan against their retirement funds in their account, and they pay 8%. LACERS is receiving getting back 8% on that $50,000, correct?
Yes, assuming repayment, yes.
Aside from that, the $50,000 in their account remains in the account?
No, depending on the source of funding.
So they're actually borrowing their own money.
Mm-hmm. They're not taking a loan against their own money, borrowing that money out.
Because there's a difference, because life insurance companies do it differently. Obviously, they have different rules and regulations and flexibilities. When somebody has money in, for example, a tax-sheltered annuity with a life insurance company, the life insurance company allows them to borrow up to X amount based on the IRS code and all that. And then what happens is they borrow against it. So they don't exactly borrow their own money. They borrow against it because it's a life insurance company. So the life insurance company gets that $50,000 from somewhere else. And then the $50,000 in their account actually continues to earn as it normally would. They just happen to use the life insurance company as a source to borrow money from. And they pay, say, 8%. Mm-hmm. So technically, there's a difference in that example. Here, LACERS is not a bank, they're not a life insurance company, so the only money that they have to borrow, to allow people to borrow, is in fact their own money. Correct?
If it's going to be coming from their account and not the general fund, that's correct.
Well, LACERS doesn't have the authority to lend.
No, we do not. The city at large would have the ability to loan from the general fund, but if it's coming from LACERS.
Sorry. Yeah.
So recommendation is against?
Yes, that's correct.
I can understand the concern.
But with all due respect, they do have the ability to borrow against their account already. It's just not specifically for foreclosure?
The only loan program we have currently is for people that are involved in the disability retirement application process.
Okay.
So isn't there a hardship? If you bring a hardship, you can...
That's for deferred compensation. If a city employee is a member of deferred comp, then they do have a hardship provision where they can go ahead.
LACERS, okay.
Not for LACERS.
You need 10 years in order to draw the LACERS, or 7 years of age? to draw on LACERS?
7 years of...
At seven, there are different criteria for retirement. At 70 years of age, an active employee could retire with any years of service. It depends on their age and years of service mix.
But is it minimum 10 years to draw LACER money?
No, for age 70, active employee could go into retirement even with one pay period, conceivably, and start receiving some money from LACER. 60 years of age, 10 years of continuous service, 55 years of age, 30 years of service. Just depends on the mix of age and years of service.
So until you're 55, it takes 30 years to vest in LACERs?
You have your own contributions. If you were to leave and not retire from LACER, you have your own contributions and interest you could take out, but not the city's.
So say my distinguished colleague here who can do 8 years as a council member. Oh, I'm sorry.
You cut me out?
No, I'm
Did you endorse
saying-
my opponent? No.
The old ways, where you can only do 8 years. Okay, then what happens?
That's why we have the limited term retirement plan for elected positions who may not vest in the LACER's plan. So there would be an option whether to opt out of our regular defined benefit plan into the limited term plan, which is a defined contribution plan.
But those of us who could stay for 12, then you draw the pension at end of 12.
At your option, yes, depending on your, once again, your age, years of service mix.
And minimum age is 55.
Correct.
Well, I'll be there soon.
Okay.
Watch out for what?
Move the
Yeah. All right,
CAO's,
so we'll
move the CAO's recommendation.
Move the CO's recommendation. Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you.
That concludes our items for today.
Question?
Thank you very much. Mr. Perry, thank you very much.